Hello, Leo. You didn't just stumble across this video by chance. You were guided here, for a reason, and right on time. Let me ask you something bold. What if the very breakdown you've been struggling through is actually the beginning of your breakthrough? This isn't just another horoscope reading. This is your map for May 23rd to 25th, 3 of the most powerful days this month to rebuild, rise, and receive what's already destined for you. You're watching Eternal Mindfulness, and I'm here not only to deliver astrological insight, but to walk beside you as you reclaim your voice, your power, and your divine timing. Because Leo, this isn't just about predictions, it's about remembrance. A remembering of who you really are, and what you've always been capable of. From May 23rd to 25th, the Sun completes its final steps in Taurus and prepares to shift into Gemini. At the same time, the Moon enters a glowing gibbous phase, illuminating the emotional space where healing, rebirth, and unexpected blessings are all waiting for you. And yes, what's coming is big. A tsunami of luck is moving into your life. But don't be afraid. This isn't here to destroy you, it's here to clear the path for you. Old beliefs, outdated roles, relationships that drain you. This is the wave that breaks what no longer serves you. So you can finally build on truth, not on survival. This reading is especially for those of you who've felt stuck between endings and beginnings, who've outgrown what once felt safe, but haven't yet seen where to go next. Leo, the universe doesn't want you to hustle harder. It wants you to surrender smarter, to align instead of force, to trust instead of chase. And trust me when I say this. What broke you is now what builds you. If you've been waiting for a sign to forgive, release, or speak your truth, this is it. This is your portal to healing. Your invitation to love more deeply. Your permission to rest, reset, and rise with intention. Now, before we dive into your cards and decode the energy of this 3-day window, allow me to take a moment to say thank you. Truly. Thank you for being here, not just watching, but arriving with your presence, your openness, and your energy. Every like, every comment, and every subscription is not just a click. It's a connection. It's what fuels this space we're building together at Eternal Mindfulness. And from the bottom of my heart, I see you, I honor you, and I thank you. Your support allows us to continue bringing transformational messages to seekers like you around the world. So Leo, please stay with me until the very end of this reading. Because what the universe is about to reveal to you, especially in these 3 sacred days, is nothing short of breathtaking. Now tell me, my fierce-hearted Leo tribe, what energy pulled you here today? Drop it in the comments, I'm right here with you. When the tower appears, most instinctively fear collapse. But collapse is only frightening when we are still clinging to the illusion of permanence. What seems to be falling apart may actually be falling into place. And in this moment, dear Leo, you are standing in the space between what no longer serves you and what has not yet fully arrived. This is not punishment. It is not failure. It is the natural course of all things that rise, transform, and return stronger. There comes a time when life no longer allows you to keep living on foundations that were built on old survival patterns, people-pleasing, or outdated versions of who you thought you had to be. And this moment, centered around May 23rd, is just that, a powerful energetic turning point where the universe doesn't just suggest change, it insists on it. As the sun prepares to shift signs and the gibbous moon expands in the sky, there's an almost magnetic pull toward truth, toward clarity, and ultimately, toward freedom. But before freedom, there must be release. Imagine a house that's been lived in for years. The walls hold whispers of who you used to be. The floorboards creak with outdated expectations. Maybe it was comfortable, even familiar, but something inside you has outgrown the space. That discomfort you've been feeling isn't a sign you're weak. It's a sign you're awakening. And just like the Tower card suggests, if you don't begin the process of renovation from within, the universe may send a storm to knock those walls down for you. Yet even in the storm, there is grace. You may feel exposed right now. Raw. Like everything is shifting and you no longer know where to plant your feet. But this is not the end. It's the sacred in-between. The space where the old dissolves and the new quietly begins forming, often underground, where the eye can't yet see. So if your career path is changing, or relationships are realigning, or even your inner self feels unfamiliar, let that be okay. You're not meant to be who you were yesterday. Life is always in motion. Even when we sit still, we are turning with the earth. Nothing is stagnant. Nothing is truly lost. All is simply changing form. This is why May 23rd holds such significance. Not just astrologically, but symbolically. Energies are aligning to help you not just let go, but to release with grace. The kind of release that doesn't come from rejection, but from deep respect. From understanding that not everything is meant to stay, and not every version of yourself is meant to survive the next chapter. There is a subtle wisdom in learning when to stand firm, and when to bow like bamboo, flexible but rooted, able to withstand any storm. What is being taken from you now is not a curse. It is a cleansing. You are being invited, gently but clearly, to surrender to what is real, not what is imagined or expected. And in that surrender, a new foundation can begin. One that is aligned with who you are now, not who you had to be. So breathe deeply. Don't rush to rebuild. Let the ground settle. Let the sky clear. You are not being punished, you are being recentered. And even if it feels like everything is falling apart, trust that something more honest, more lasting, and more vibrant is quietly beginning beneath your feet. The Tower doesn't destroy you. It liberates you. And the life that comes next will be built on your truth, not your fear. That is the gift of this moment. And you, Leo, are ready to receive it. After the storm clears, there is a silence, not of absence, but of possibility. And in that stillness, something begins to move beneath the surface. That quiet motion is the first sign of life returning. The cards that arrive next, Ace of Pentacles and Four of Wands, carry that exact message. They aren't loud or dramatic. They don't demand your attention. Instead, they invite you to notice what is already taking root in your life, perhaps without your full awareness. These cards speak not of the chaos that came before, but of the grounded, stable growth that follows when the soil has finally been cleared. Every intention you've planted, whether a whispered wish for peace, the silent start of a new project, or even the decision to believe in yourself again, has not been in vain. The universe does not forget seeds just because they've taken time to break the surface. And Leo, your seeds have been patient. Your ideas, your longings, your private acts of perseverance, they've all been growing in the dark, waiting for the right moment to bloom. That moment is now. This part of the journey is subtle, but powerful. Unlike the tower that comes crashing down, the Ace of Pentacles arrives like morning light. It doesn't shock, it steadies. It reminds you that what you're building next isn't based on urgency or survival. It's based on clarity, care, and consistency. And that's what makes it sustainable. With the energy of the Four of Wands beside it, you're not just beginning something new. You're beginning something that will last, something that offers both internal and external stability. Think of this as the first real steps into a life aligned with your values, not just your goals. What makes this period, especially around May 24th, so significant is the alignment of Saturn and Venus in a harmonious trine. Saturn, the great teacher, grounds your energy with wisdom and realism. Venus, the planet of beauty and value, enhances your ability to recognize what truly matters. When they work together, they don't promise quick success. They promise meaningful progress. This is the kind of cosmic support that helps you commit to what matters, not what merely tempts you. So if a financial opportunity reappears, or a partnership resurfaces, trust that you now have the discernment to make the right choice, not from fear of missing out, but from inner knowing. This is also a time to practice quiet devotion to your future self. You don't have to overhaul your life in a single day. In fact, the most radical thing you can do is show up gently, with intention. Begin each morning by writing down 3 things you're grateful for. Let your mind remember that there is already good here, even if you're still waiting for more. Then, write one small promise to yourself, just one. It could be, I will speak kindly to myself today, or I will make time to rest. These aren't grand declarations. They are anchors. And from them, real change begins. There's a teaching that reminds us, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So when you water a single seed with mindfulness, you're also nurturing your mindset, your habits, your relationships, and your sense of worth. What seems small is never insignificant. Just like a single drop of water reflects the whole sky, one aligned action reflects the deeper truth of who you're becoming. And remember, growth doesn't always look like expansion. Sometimes, it looks like stillness, or clarity, or simply not choosing what isn't right anymore. Sometimes, progress is walking away. Sometimes, it's pausing long enough to hear yourself think. You're not behind, Leo. You're exactly where you need to be, on sacred ground, where everything you once thought was wasted is now becoming the very foundation you will rise from. The seeds have not forgotten you. And now, they are ready to bloom. There are moments in life that don't arrive with noise, but with a soft pull, like a gentle tide that knows exactly when to return. This part of your journey feels like that. A quiet return. Not necessarily of a person knocking at your door, but of an energy, a memory, or a version of you that you thought had been left in the past. When the cards Judgment, Eye of the Needle, and the Hanged Man show up together, they ask you not to look outside for answers, but to turn inward with openness, humility, and a willingness to see what has changed, not only in others, but within yourself. Someone may be thinking of you right now. Not out of longing or regret, but from a place of awareness. Perhaps they now understand what they couldn't before. Perhaps they, too, have unraveled old patterns, shed old skins, and arrived at a new kind of clarity. Or perhaps the one returning isn't someone else, it's the you who once loved freely, before disappointment built its quiet walls. Whoever or whatever is making its way back into your orbit, this moment is not about reliving the past. It's about meeting the present with new eyes. Growth doesn't just happen through movement. It happens in stillness. The Hanged Man teaches that pause is not punishment, it's perspective. And when you allow yourself to truly see, not with judgment, but with presence, you can choose not to repeat what was, but to rewrite what comes next. This is why forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the story of who you had to be in the aftermath. You don't forgive to forget. You forgive to make space, for peace, for possibility, for something more honest than the version you've been carrying. May 25th brings with it the moon in harmonious trine to Neptune, a deeply emotional alignment that opens the heart in subtle but profound ways. This is the kind of energy that dissolves barriers, not through force, but through softness. It's easier now to express what's been trapped in silence. It's easier to see the humanity in someone who once hurt you. And maybe most importantly, it's easier to hold your own heart with gentleness, rather than judgment. Let yourself speak. Not for the sake of changing what was, but to liberate what is. Let your truth move through you, not to prove a point, but to free a burden. Sometimes, saying, "This hurt me," is enough to release it. Sometimes, choosing not to explain is the most powerful clarity you can offer. You are not responsible for the healing of others. But you are responsible for how long you carry what was never meant to stay. There's a teaching that speaks to this beautifully. When the cup is too full of old water, we must first pour it out to make room for the new. And just like that, your heart must be emptied, not from love, but from residue. The love can stay. The lesson, too. But the resentment, the endless retelling of pain, the version of yourself that still tenses at the memory, that can go now. That doesn't have to cross into this next chapter with you. So place your hand on your chest, breathe in the fullness of this moment, and say to yourself, not as a command, but as a gentle offering, I don't need to carry the pain to remember what I learned. I choose to carry the love, and the wisdom. This is the kind of forgiveness that restores you, not just in relationship with others, but in your relationship with the mirror. The one who returns may be someone else. Or it may be you. Either way, what matters most now is that you meet them with your whole heart, unburdened, aware, and free. When we speak of cycles, we're not only referring to the turning of planets or the rise and fall of seasons. We're talking about the quieter revolutions within you, how you come back to the same lessons with deeper eyes, how the same patterns eventually begin to unravel once awareness settles in. The wheel of fortune and justice appearing together is not coincidence, it's a recognition of a rhythm within your life that is finally ready to resolve. These cards don't promise immediate outcomes or quick rewards. What they offer is balance, realignment, and the quiet reassurance that what once felt unanswered will not remain so forever. There's something profoundly liberating about understanding that closure doesn't always arrive through explanation. It often comes through acceptance. And Leo, this phase of your journey, especially during these 3 pivotal days from May 23rd to 25th, isn't about fixing what happened. It's about releasing what no longer needs to follow you forward. Justice, in its highest form, isn't about revenge or correction. It's about restoring harmony, not in the outer world alone, but in your inner space, where the imbalance has lingered long enough. Perhaps you've given more than was ever returned. Perhaps you've carried burdens that were never truly yours. Perhaps you've tried to make peace in places where peace was never welcomed. Whatever the story, it's important now to know, the wheel has turned. What once bound you no longer has to define you. There is no need to keep re-explaining your worth, reproving your strength, or reopening old wounds just to be seen. There is a deeper kind of justice unfolding, one that requires your trust, not your effort. Cosmically, this moment is marked by a release of karmic weight. But practically, it is simply the point at which your internal clarity no longer supports external confusion. The self that used to tolerate misalignment is fading. The need to be understood by everyone is softening. And the desire to fight for what's already drifting away. That, too, is dissolving. This isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Because not everything that breaks is broken. Some things fall apart because they were never meant to stay whole in that form. During this time, you may feel a sense of quiet neutrality, neither sadness nor elation, but something simpler, relief. Relief that you no longer have to participate in dynamics that drain you. Relief that you can move without resistance. Relief that the universe is already rebalancing, even if you can't yet see how. This is what it means to be released from the wheel. Not that life won't continue turning, but that you are no longer attached to the same old axle of suffering. You are not spinning in place, you are moving forward, with a lighter load. There is a teaching that reminds us, what you do not resolve within, you will revisit without. But now, you are choosing resolution. Not through control or force, but through clarity and courage. You are not avoiding the past, you are bowing to it, and then walking on. You are not erasing your story, you are allowing it to be complete. And most beautifully, you're doing it without needing permission. Let this be the moment you step through the door without looking back. Let the past dissolve, not as an escape, but as a gesture of respect for how far you've come. The version of you who tried so hard to be understood is now giving way to the version who simply understands. And that is more than enough. So as the wheel turns, as justice quietly restores what has long been distorted, trust this truth: your peace is not dependent on outcome. It is the outcome. And now, Leo, it's yours to keep. After the wheel turns and the weight lifts, what's left behind isn't always celebration. Sometimes, it's the quiet realization that the person we most need to make peace with is the one staring back at us in the mirror. The appearance of the Ace of Cups alongside the Devil is a powerful reflection of this truth. These cards aren't opposites, they're complements. One offers emotional renewal, the other exposes what has kept us tethered. Together, they ask a simple but brave question: can you forgive yourself for who you had to be while you were still learning? There are parts of our past we revisit not because we haven't moved on, but because we haven't fully integrated the version of ourselves that lived through it. Maybe you remember the moment you silenced your needs to protect someone else's peace. Maybe you recall the relationship where you loved more than you were loved in return. Maybe you said yes when you wanted to say no, or stayed too long when your soul was already leaving. It's easy to look back and label these moments as mistakes. But from a higher view, they were invitations. They were part of your becoming. And now, rather than punish yourself for them, you're being asked to embrace the wisdom they gave you. Forgiveness, in its truest form, isn't about erasing the past. It's about releasing the resistance to it. It's about letting go of the voice inside that still whispers, "You should have known better." Because the truth is, you didn't. Not then. But you know better now, and that knowing didn't come cheaply. It came through lived experience, through loss, through surrender. And most beautifully, it came through love. Even if it was love given in imbalance, it was still an expression of your capacity to care. That matters. That's not weakness. That's growth. There's a quiet principle that teaches, we suffer not because of what happened, but because we carry it too long without offering it the space to breathe. That's where the Ace of Cups comes in. It's not just about love, it's about release. Emotional renewal doesn't come from avoiding what hurts. It comes from finally feeling it all the way through, and then choosing softness anyway. This is the water that purifies. This is the moment you place your hands over your heart and say, "It's okay now. I didn't know then. But I do now." What makes this point in your journey especially meaningful is that it allows for gentleness to be your next step. You don't have to fix what already unfolded. You don't have to rewrite the chapters where you were still finding your way. You just have to stop punishing yourself for not being fully formed in a moment that was meant to shape you. This is where healing becomes devotion, not to who you were, but to who you're becoming. And self-love stops being an abstract ideal and becomes an action. A choice. A practice. So take the bath. Wear the colors that bring warmth to your skin. Write the letter not to correct, but to comfort. Say the words you always needed to hear from someone else, this time, from your own mouth. Look yourself in the eyes and say, "I forgive you. I trust you. I love you." You're allowed to start again. This is the permission that sets everything else in motion. Not because you're erasing what was, but because you're building from it, gently, wisely, and on your own terms. The love you give yourself now doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into the foundation of a future that is kinder, more conscious, and more aligned with your truest self. If you're still here, still breathing with me through the final moments of this message, then I know something inside you has stirred. It might not be fully formed yet. It might just be a quiet recognition, a subtle pull in your chest, a whisper that says, something is shifting. And maybe that's enough right now. You don't need all the answers. You don't need to be fully healed or endlessly brave. You just need to be willing to meet yourself where you are, and take the next honest step. Because this wave of energy that's been moving through your life from May 23rd to 25th hasn't come to break you. It has come to awaken you. And what it's awakening is not some future version of yourself who has it all together, but the part of you that already knows the way home. The part that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. The part of you that longs not for perfection, but for truth, for aliveness, for real connection. You didn't stumble upon this video by accident. Your timing is not random. Something in you aligned with this moment because your soul is ready, not to be rescued, but to be reclaimed. Ready to build, not from fear or expectation, but from clarity and courage. Ready to forgive, to speak, to let go, and to begin again, this time not as a reaction, but as a conscious choice. So before you go, I want to ask you something, not for me, but for you. What is one thing you're ready to release right now? What belief, pattern, or self-doubt are you finally willing to lay down, not because you're weak, but because you're tired of carrying what was never yours to begin with? And what is one gentle action you'll take this week, not to fix yourself, but to nurture who you're becoming? Drop your reflections in the comments below. Let this be your declaration to yourself and the universe. Let this space be a mirror and a map for others who are walking the same road, because you never know who might need to hear what only you have the courage to say out loud. And if this message has resonated with your heart, even in a small way, if something here felt like it was written just for you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. Your engagement is what keeps this sacred space alive. Every like, every comment, every new subscriber, it all helps carry this light farther than I could ever do alone. So thank you, truly, for being here. For showing up for yourself. For allowing me, through this small screen, to walk beside you for just a few minutes on this wild, beautiful path. And Leo, my dear light bringer, remember this. You were never meant to dim to fit in. You were born to rise. To roar. To radiate. Not someday. Now. Say it with me in the comments if you're ready. I am stepping fully into my light. And when you do, watch what unfolds.